And so as we're getting sign-in forms sent out here, if I could have folks, I've got a couple of steps here on my screen. Step number one is just logging into your NoRedInk accounts. Make sure you are in fact logged in. This is going to be interactive today. I will show you the different activities on my slides, but NoRedInk is going to be one of those platforms, one of the programs where if you are doing it alongside me, you're going to learn better. And then my second one is our check-in question for today. So we're going to respond to this NoRedInk quick write in the chat. And so the question I have for you all is if you could make one thing, it could be an item, a service, in the world free of charge to everyone, what would you choose and why? If you want to take a step further, how could it even change the world? So we'll take the next minute or so to respond to that quick write in the chat. So what are you making free? And I'm excited to hear what teachers in Wainimi are doing. For folks just joining us, we're getting logged into NoRedInk, and we're going to be sharing our response to the quick write in the chat. So what item or service are you making free? And don't forget to sign in as well. Awesome. Olivia, thank you for kicking us off today. Mental health services, such a good one. Solving a lot of problems in terms of discipline and things. Feels very relevant. Becky, yes, childcare, daycare. That would be fabulous. I would love that. Other items or services that we're making free. If you want to come off mute, you can too. I can also invite some voices in here. Okay, I know I've got like two more voices, two more ideas here. Great. Thanks, Rosie, for sharing. Gym, exercise, yoga, beautiful. Okay, love this. Rice Krispie treats for everybody. Healthy food, beautiful. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for dropping those thoughts in the chat. I appreciate you all just taking a moment to do a quick write, knowing that we're in a training all about writing. We got to start off with a little writing ourselves. So let's go ahead and dive in, folks. My name is Liz. For those of you I have not yet met, I am the professional learning specialist who's working closely with Wainimi this school year. A little bit of my background. I am a former middle school ELA teacher. I taught 6th and 7th grade. And also literacy intervention teacher where I worked primarily with grades 3 to 5 and our struggling readers. I was also an instructional coach. I taught in the Bay Area, California. I still live in the Bay Area, California, but I work very closely with districts in SoCal area as well. This is my 3rd school year with NoRedInk, my 1st school year with Wainimi, and my random fun fact this year is that I am a certified yoga teacher on the side. So this morning I did a sunrise flow. On Friday mornings, I do sunrise flows as well. So let's go ahead and dive in a little bit more into our session for our time together today. And so this training that we're doing together is all things NoRedInk and the CAASPP. So the big question that we're really going to be anchoring to is how can I use NoRedInk to prepare my students for the CAASPP for CAASPP testing. Now, when we're thinking about CAASPP testing, I know this is top of mind for everybody at this point, knowing that we really are gearing up and getting ready to prepare our students for that coming in April or maybe a little bit later. Today, we're going to really talk about the performance task, since that really is the most applicable part here when it comes to extended writing stamina, getting kids to break down a prompt. Those are all different things we're going to bring into our session and our time together for today. So let's go ahead and dive in. Now, anytime I begin a session, I always like to anchor in a quote. And so for our quote today, it is, "Assessment is the bridge between teaching and learning. The most important assessment happens during the learning process. when there is still time to do something with the information. And so when we're thinking about it, it is the end of January. This is not the time for us all to panic and think that we can't do anything at this point. We can accomplish a lot. And so when we're thinking about preparing our students for the SBAC, for the CAASPP, we want to make it authentic. We can even make it fun, where we're really encouraging students to think about what's actually happening in the learning process itself and then making those key changes. So what does the research say? What actually works in terms of preparing students for these state assessments like the SBAC? The first thing, when it comes to teaching writing, we do want to make sure that we are providing students with targeted mini lessons that are prioritizing a new writing strategy, right? How can we actually demonstrate what that new writing technique looks like and then give students the at-bat? Now, I'm sure no surprise there, modeling, right? We all know modeling is key. And so we're thinking about different ways that we can actually model effective practices, being writers, being co-writers with our students in our classrooms. And so we can think about doing things like bringing in model text or mentor text, and then doing explicit think alouds for our students as well. And finally, feedback. Feedback is the most powerful tool that we can provide our students here. We want to make sure that we're giving feedback throughout the writing process, not just at the end. And so today we'll talk about different feedback techniques you can lean into and ways that you could even bring this into your classroom to make it hopefully a little bit more timely and actionable, all while preparing students for that high stakes test. Okay, so our objective for today. In our session for today, you are going to learn how to implement NoRedInk to prepare your students for the SBAC. We're going to first and foremost start just by reviewing what do we have. So what does NoRedInk actually offer in terms of SBAC aligned resources? From there, we're then going to dive into exploring two different writing activities. The first one is going to be our guided drafts, which is scaffolded essay support that helps students building an essay. The second activity type we're going to look at today is called our quick writes, which is unscaffolded, but will be more of that authentic test prep to really get them ready for the SBAC. And then of course, throughout, we're going to share best practices when it comes to just implementing NoRedInk overall, really into your instruction. Okay, now that I've kind of shared a little bit more context here, I would love to hear from all of you. So when it comes to preparing your students for the ELA SBAC performance task, what is most challenging? So you can drop a 1 in the chat if it's like burnout from test prep. Number 2 would be limited resources. 3 would be time to prepare. So if you can drop a 1, 2, or 3 in the chat. Thanks, Paige, for kicking us off. Okay, yep, Sarah. Okay, lots of burnout from test prep. All right, knowing that I've got lots of 1s here, and Rosie, thanks for putting in time to prepare. I'm curious to hear like what specifically about that? Can you be a little bit more specific? Is it like giving kids too many timed writes in classrooms? Is it kids feeling like they're burned out? Is it teachers feeling burned out from assigning SBAC aligned prompts? Liz, if you have other insight too, you can always jump in if you want to share maybe what you've noticed or any trends as well. I like the timing. Like, where do we actually get the time to do this? Especially when we have other competing priorities in our classrooms, for sure. Yeah, ELA block is a must. Okay, so in terms of burnout, right? I'm going to be able to share. Okay, beautiful. Lots of thoughts coming in the chat now. Engagement. Ooh, I love that. How do we keep this engaging? Good. We'll definitely talk about that for today. Not enough timing in the day. We know that's real when a block feels short. We test more than we teach. Okay. And thank you for bringing that up. This is not a time where I'm going to say that this is just a test prep session where you're drilling and killing skills. No, we're going to talk about authentic assessment that's getting kids to really explore the content they're looking at. And then, yeah, timing. Okay. That's helpful, y'all. Thanks for sharing just a little bit more context about like what that looks like at your campuses, at your districts. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and continue on. Okay, so just a reminder about one of the core problems that we're working to solve at NoRedInk. We really are committed to helping all of you as teachers to provide meaningful, timely feedback as students are working through the writing process, right? We also do want to name that every classroom is going to be a little bit different. And so before we dive into the writing activities together today, I'm going to show us 3 different samples and 3 different ways that you could choose to implement this in your classroom. And now I know that this is very common knowledge, but I do just want to explicitly name how teachers are using NoRedInk. So the first way that we see probably most commonly is for whole group instruction. And so for whole group instruction, that's when your kids are working on the same targeted skill, part of the same unit. And this is really great for the performance task if you're having every kiddo working on an SBAC aligned prompt, right? Getting them ready for that state assessment. Now, the second type of engagement is then going to be small group instruction. And so this is when you get to pull your kiddos in the back and you're working on a specific targeted skill. So if you're noticing that kids are struggling with topic sentences, you could do a mini lesson on topic sentences working with that small group of students. And then finally, independent work. Today, when we're talking about SBAC prep, you might have some ideas for how you could use this independently, but I do want to encourage you to think about how are you actually baking this in, making this feel like more of a cohesive approach so it doesn't just feel like one-off test prep in your classrooms. But we do have the independent work, the independent practice that is available here as well. And so when we see teachers using this, especially for test prep, we're typically leaning the most into whole group instruction, small group instruction, and some folks do like to still do that independent. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead. We're going to dive in now to NoRedInk. If you want to follow along with me, feel free to do so. I'll also demo everything here for you on our screen. So this here is going to be your teacher dashboard. To access our curricular resources, I'm going to hit this Browse and Assign button here up at the top. Now here, under Collections, this is going to be pairing different activity types together. And then Assignment Types is when you assign the individual targeted activities. In Collections, you're going to notice down here in the center of your page says Standards and Tests. So I'm going to click on this Standards and Tests page here. And you're going to notice the second tile in says Smarter Balanced. And so I'm going to click into Smarter Balanced here, and I'm going to show you how you can easily access all the NoRedInk SBAC prep in one spot. So you're going to see here are different grade bands. And let's say that I teach 5th grade ELA. I'm going to select grade 5. And you're then going to see we've got the short answer responses that are released directly from the SBAC. And then we also have 2 performance tasks, once again, released from the SBAC. The first one is the Ready for a Nap informational performance task. The second one being the Service Animals persuasive performance task. Now, as I click and open this section here, you're going to see we've got the released short answer questions and the extended responses. So let's say I'm prepping my student for that extended response. I'm going to have 2 different options here. I can either assign the scaffolded version, which is going to be the guided draft, working students through that. If you're newer to guided drafts, no fear, I will walk you through what that looks like today. The second version then here is going to be the authentic practice essay, which is going to be unscaffolded. So more of that authentic test to get them ready for the big day. So this here is going to be unscaffolded, but ready for students. Now, if I wanted to preview any of these assignments here, all I simply have to do is hit this eyeball icon, okay? So I do want to give us some time to orient to this page. So here's what we're going to do. And in your NoRedInk accounts now, I want you all to go and start to look at some of the prompts for your specific grade band. So head to Browse and Assign up at the top of your page and select Standards and Tests. From there, you're then going to hit the SBAC button. And I want you to start to consider how you use this specific tile for lesson planning, okay? All right, any ideas coming up for our group now that we've seen this? Awesome, thanks Rosie for diving in. I like the scaffolded practice essay. Then I can assign the authentic practice. Perfect, yeah, that's how I envision it too, right? Maybe the first one that you're doing with kids is the scaffolded, they get that guided support. Then you release them into the more authentic prep. Okay, all right, let's go ahead. We're gonna continue on. Awesome, Sarah, thanks for putting your thoughts in the chat too. All right, so the SBAC, right? We oriented now to those instructional models, right? You started to dig your toes in a little bit more to see what we do offer. Now, I do want to make sure that you are able to see the clear connection between the way that we format NoRedInk and the way that we are actually talking about the SBAC and getting kids to practice online. I see a question in the chat for the first time. Is there a way to project the assignment to teach students how to answer? Yes, and so I will be showing you that today. I'll actually walk you through the student preview so you can see that. But I think co-constructing writing for the first time is a very, very strong move on the teacher side. Yeah, great question. Okay, so for the summative SBAC assessment, on my screen here, right, I've got the sample CAASPP, and I even pulled it up here just so we could see it, right? So we all know over here, kids are gonna have access to that prompt, and then they're gonna have to do their short answer and then their essay. And so it's very common for us to have these sources over here on the right, and then students are able to make it full screen, make it smaller screen. They can come in here and turn on their line reader. They can take notes. So they have access to all these different components here. Now for this, let's talk about now our guided essays first. And so there are going to be a lot of similarities between the way that the CAASPP website is formatted and the way that our guided drafts actually show up. So I'm going to pull up an example here. And just a reminder, our guided essays are going to be scaffolded versions. And so once again, I'm envisioning I here am a 5th grade teacher that's helping to prep my students for the SBAC. So on the left-hand side, you're going to notice we've got our prompt, and then down below, we've got our sources. The language matches the SBAC exactly, right? It's going to tell us you need to read the 3 sources. Here is your assignment. And so we can support students with actually thinking about how do they break down that prompt? What is the prompt asking me to do? Now, as they then scroll down, they're then going to be taken to the sources themselves. You're going to notice here that students are able to make this full screen. I highly recommend that we get students in this habit of making it full screen because it's going to be reinforcing some of those annotation strategies. Now, when it comes to internalizing and analyzing these sources, you have a couple options. So you'll notice here that my cursor has come to life. So I can actually come in here and I can highlight a word, a section of the text. I can come in here and I can actually edit the color, which I know SBAC you can't do, but NoRedInk, still worth it. Like maybe for main idea, you're using yellow, and pulling evidence, you're using pink. And so you can give students different colors to really bring meaning to their annotations. From there then, you're able to come over here and you can add stickers or emojis. So actually showing students how they can have reactions to text as they're reading. So for example, an exclamation point if there's something exciting that's happening, a question mark for maybe like an unfamiliar word or a big question they have coming up. A light bulb could be like an aha moment, a heart for something that they love, a star for like a key event. And so if I say I want to do like a light bulb here, I'm having an aha moment, I might even choose to attach an annotation. As I attach that annotation, then students can say, I realized, and I can hit that save button. So students can actually interact and really read along, making their thinking visible as they're going through this text. Now, the beautiful thing about this is that on the teacher side, you're actually able to see the annotations. So you can actually see what are students putting on their pages as they are preparing for the SBAC. Now, this is going to be the digital version that's available, But all of our sources can be printed as well if you want to start by doing this by hand and then eventually gradually releasing students to like a blank piece of paper for annotations. So there's a couple of different options here. Yeah, Liz.
I want to add something. I'm sure a lot of you realize, but maybe some of you don't. This feature is also available in Newsela. So if you use Newsela, you can also have students highlight and add annotations and then show how your reading is connecting with your writing, just so you can emphasize that skill in two different places.
That's a great idea. Awesome. Thanks, Liz. Okay, I'm going to exit this full screen mode here. Now there's a couple other tabs I want to show you before we actually get into the writing part. Now the second example you're going to see here is going to be tips and examples. So for this sample released CAASPP prompt, it is going to be an expository piece that kiddos are writing. You're going to notice there is a tutorial for students to view as they write. However, what I'll say is when I see teachers actually rolling this out, they oftentimes start with a mini lesson on the writing genre to teach students about what they're writing. So this is a pre-made tutorial that you can project in the front of the classroom and walk them through. So it's going to start by talking about like, okay, what is expository writing? From there, it's then going to go into the purpose of this type of writing and how it is organized. So when I hit where do I start? It's then going to bring students to an introduction, for example. And so it's going to tell them about what goes in the introduction versus a body paragraph versus a conclusion. And so this is a great teaching tool. I would bring this into our first lesson even before we're going over that guided draft in our class. The nice thing about this as well is that at the end, there is going to be a check for understanding that you can do with your students. When you're doing the check for understanding, have your kids turn and talk, discuss, and share what they think the correct answer is. So these tutorials do exist, and students can come and reference them as they write. Now, the last tab up at the top then is going to be the rubric. Knowing that this is prepping kids for the SBAC, we've got the CAASPP rubric directly in here. And so you'll see students can actually reference, okay, the first 4 points are going to be around organization and purpose. The next part, evidence elaboration, and then lastly, conventions. And so they can actually see how we want them to be scored for that assessment. All right, now my favorite part is when kids actually get to dive in. And so I'm going to click into this body paragraph, for example, to show you how it works. So as I click into my body paragraph here, I'm now going to be reminded of the key parts of a body paragraph. I need to have a topic sentence, I need evidence, and an explanation. If I don't know what that is, I can click on this caret here, and it's going to define topic sentence. If I don't know what evidence is, I can click here, and it will define it. And similarly for that explanation as well. And so this is a tool to really guide students to become a little bit more independent as they're diving in. Now, if students are confused and they're like, what is a body paragraph again? They can click this button here, and it's going to now take them to a new tutorial that's just about body paragraphs and expository essays. And so it's going to do a deep dive into a body paragraph, and it will even provide here an example that's going to highlight the topic sentence, the evidence, and the explanation. All right, last part. Example essays. There are viewing example essays that are readily available here, and it is going to color code our topic sentence, our evidence, and our explanation. So that is going to exist here. Now, when students are typing, they're going to come in here and they'll type here in this box. Once students have finished a body paragraph or the entire essay, you're going to notice we've got this playback button. So students can actually have their writing read back aloud to them so they can hear what it actually sounds like. So this is going to be high-level overview of our guided drafts that are available. Questions coming up for our group here before I give you some time to reflect in the chat. Okay, let's take 30 seconds. My timer's not working today. I'm sorry, y'all. Let's take the next 30 seconds. You can drop in the chat your answer to these 2 questions. Great question in the chat. Where's the playback button? When kids are actually typing their writing, they'll see that blue play button here. All right, so our 2 questions we can feel free to drop in the chat. What do we notice in terms of similarity between the CAASPP guided essays. Second question, any lingering questions or wonderings coming up for you all? Yeah, I agree. Eva, anytime I could get my kids reading their writing aloud to actually hear what it sounded like, it was a very, very powerful tool. Yeah, the layout, the formatting, topics are similar. Yes, thanks, Carla. Vocabulary, yes, right? Especially too. It's not just going to give the kids one question, right? It's going to say your assignment with a paragraph where they have to pull out the prompt. Good. Is the rubric for students always going to be in kid-friendly language? That one specifically is, but I could see a world where maybe you're printing off the rubric from CAASPP and you can have students even do like a self-evaluation of where they think they're falling on the scale for each category. But the ones that the kids see, it's going to be a little bit more student-friendly. So now that we've seen that student perspective of the guided essay, I'm now going to go ahead and actually show you how to assign one of our test prep essays, specifically anchored and aligned to the SBAC. So I'm going to head back in here to my demo account. I'm going to select this Browse and Assign button here up at the top. Now, you could choose to come to this standards and test page and assign directly that way, but I want to make sure you know the other way as well. So we're going to come over here to this assignment types, and down below in the writing button, it's going to actually take you to our writing offerings. Within NoRedInk, we offer quite a few different options. We've got our quick writes, which is unscaffolded, our guided short response, which is perfect for the short answer preparation for kids on the SBAC, and then our guided essays. So let's head into our guided essays first for today. I'm going to hit this Browse Prompts button. Now, under our guided essays, you're going to see all the different writing genres that we currently support. And since we're talking all things SBAC today, I'm going to hit test prep essays. Now here you can see the the second one down is then going to be our Smarter Balance. So I'll hit View 11 Assignments, and then I'm able to find my grade bands. So here for grade 5, you're going to notice I've got this eyeball icon to preview or this blue assign button. Now, for example, we talked a lot about modeling. We definitely want to be modeling this type of writing for our students. And so the first time that I am actually rolling out a guided draft in my class, I'm going to press that eyeball icon and actually walk students through the process, show them how they can use this tool. If we're not doing that, oftentimes I find that, especially our 3rd to 5th grade students, they'll just click and there's so many different buttons and they'll spend more time clicking than writing. And so we really do want to show them how they can use this as a tool. Now to assign it, you're simply going to hit this blue arrow button, and that's going to take you right to the assigning page. Now up at the top, you're going to notice this little window that says before you begin a guided draft, have students do pre-writing. I don't know about all of you, but oftentimes I would spend a lot of time creating graphic organizers. This is a quick and easy way to hopefully save you some valuable planning time. We have graphic organizers created for our elementary students and our secondary students. And let's say we were looking at working on expository writing like we were talking about. I'll hit this expository informational pre-writing button, and it's going to have different graphic organizers depending on where we're at, right? From starting with generating ideas, finding evidence, developing a thesis statement, and then finally an outline. So if I click on this outline button here, it's going to be a printable PDF that I can actually use in my classrooms. And for me, I know oftentimes I'd start with the graphic organizers, then I'd gradually release it, taking it away so students learned how to replicate a graphic organizer on their own on a blank piece of paper. So heading back here to our assigning side of the guided essay, below is going to be your prompt. Now, since we're talking about prepping kids for the assessment, you could make adjustments to the prompt, but I would not necessarily advise that because we want to expose students to the language, the vocabulary that they're going to see on that state assessment. And so if you wanted to, you could adjust it, but since it's state assessment, I would advise you probably not to. Similarly, here then are your sources. These are the ones that are directly released from the CAASPP. Once again, if you were like, hey, I just want to do 2 instead of the 3, you have the ability to edit the excerpts or get rid of them altogether. Now, finally, then you're going to see we've got this genre button, and down below then is going to be the parts of an essay. Now, maybe in one of your first lessons, you're just working on constructing an introduction. You do have the ability to actually come in here and customize the parts of an essay. So this makes it a little bit more chunked, a little bit more digestible for kiddos. So if it's the first lesson, we're just working on intros, I might say title, don't assign, intro required, and everything else could be optional or not even assigned. That way, they're only seeing the parts that are truly necessary in order to hit the daily objective. And so that is just an option here. You can play around with that customization. At the bottom then, it is going to give you an estimated amount of time. It's about 70 to 80 minutes, and I'll hit this continue button. From here then, you'll assign it to either your entire class, or maybe you created a further differentiated assignment for your multilingual learners or your students with IEPs. You could come in here and individually assign that targeted assignment to students, and then hit that start date, due date, give it a name, total points, and hit the assign button. So that is going to be the assigning side here of this guided draft. Any initial questions before I show you the grading side and give you some time to explore? Grading. So like we said, feedback. Feedback is a very, very powerful tool that we want to be using and leveraging in our classrooms. And so I want to make sure how you know how to give feedback in NoRedInk for these essays first. So I'm going to hit this My Assignments button up at the top, and I do actually have some sample student data in here that I can demo for you. So at the top, I'm going to toggle to my correct period. So I'm in class period number 4, and you're going to see I've got this guided essay here, expository guided draft, animals and humans. Now to grade it, I'll simply come here and hit this View Writing button. And you're going to see that it's going to break down my students into ready for grading, still working, and then the last part will be graded. Something that was newly released, I want to say about a month ago now, is we now have originality insights. So you're able to actually see time submitted on the assignment, time spent on the assignment, and then copy and paste. And so especially knowing maybe this is more middle school, maybe some more 5th graders are doing this too, but knowing that students have access to many different things at their fingertips, they can easily copy and paste things over, and we can now see it. And so for example, here I can see 27% of this was in fact pasted. If I hit the grade button, it takes me directly to my student writing, and I can actually toggle on insights to see what was copy and pasted. So for example, if it was an entire essay, I could have a conversation with a student and learn a little bit more. So in this case here, when I'm looking, it's the works cited list. So we'd expect for that to be copy and pasted. But this is helpful just as a tool, just to have conversations with kids to see what actually is going on. Now for the grading side, it is very simple. It's always going to be side by side here. You're going to notice that over here, it's the different criterion that we're assessing. This first part here, so if I'm looking at these statements, I can give it a score, leave an optional comment for that criterion, and then scan down, look at topic sentences, give a piece of feedback, leave an optional comment, feedback on evidence, feedback, and so on and so forth. It is going to automatically calculate a score for you here, but let's say this was a V1 or a practice essay. You can always come in here and override a score while students are still able to see how they performed on that targeted rubric. Now, we know that there's oftentimes trends in student writing, and oftentimes you're giving the same piece of feedback to multiple kiddos. And so you do have the ability to actually create a comment bank, which is then saved in NoRedInk. So you can easily come back and reuse those comments while just changing out the kiddo's name. Now, once you've left the feedback, left your comments, you're then able to post the grade and comments, finalizing it, or send it back for revisions. Now, if you send it back for revisions, it'll automatically open back up on the student's side. They'll see your feedback, see your comments, and they'll be able to begin that draft number 2. So this is going to be the way that we're able to manually give feedback to students on a targeted rubric. Questions coming up for our group here before I give you that time to explore? Okay, great question coming in. So how can I differentiate depending on my grades? So let me just show y'all that one more time to make sure we're all feeling comfortable. If you're ready to start exploring, you can feel free to start exploring the resources as well. So when I'm differentiating an assignment, I'm gonna head back to this writing button here. And we're working on our guided essays. So I'll hit this browse prompts button. And we're heading into test prep essays. I'm gonna select test prep. And I'm gonna dive into Smarter Balanced. Now from here, let's hit the blue assign button. And this is gonna be, right, your prompt and everything. And as I hit the continue button here now, this is where you're going to have your class periods. So I just selected the 5th grade one. If period 1 and 2 are 5th grade, I am just gonna assign it to that targeted group. If period 4th and 5th are gonna be my 4th grade students, I will assign them a different targeted prompt. Okay, Helen, great question. We do have AI available specifically for our text-dependent responses. So anything that's gonna be more standards line and paragraph level, that's where the AI currently is. The current roadmap and plan is to be adding on essays, but current state of the world, we got paragraphs and the standards line ones. Okay, good question. So for the guided essays, you're gonna see it for 5th grade. If you wanted to do a different assignment for your 4th graders, you could choose to come into persuasive to assign something specifically or expository, and you're able to then dive into those. 3rd grade, I know they're still developing that, so I appreciate my 3rd grade folks hanging in there knowing that we don't fully yet have that developed for that group yet. Yes, Catherine, you can absolutely reassign writing assignments. Okay, we're gonna take about 2 more minutes of exploring the guided essays, and then I'm gonna show you the quick write offerings, which are gonna be similar. Now that we've seen more of the scaffolded version, let's talk more about authentic test prep, because unfortunately, kids are not gonna have all that scaffolded support when they're actually working on the essay itself. So for this, we're gonna recommend assigning a quick write. Now, at first glance, right, they're going to look quite similar. One of the key differences, though, is that those tips and examples are going to disappear. So things that stay the same, you're still able to have that prompt here. If it's turned on, we got text to speech. And then as we scroll down, kids still have access to the sources. Now, if we want to make this full screen, do annotations together, that is still readily available. It will all function the exact same. Now, the big difference here is you're going to notice it is a blank page. This is what students are going to see, though, when they're on the CAASPP. And so when we're thinking about that preparation, we want to get them to this point here. However, maybe you are differentiating this as well, right? Maybe some kids still need the scaffolding, so you're giving a guided essay, while other kids, they're ready to go and they're ready for that quick write. So you can still even assign the same prompt in your 5th grade class, for example, but you're differentiating depending on what your kiddos actually need. Now, in terms of the assigning side of things, I'm going to model this for you so you can actually see where these exist as well. So we're going to start at the top once again. We're going to that browse and assign button. And we're going to come over here on that right-hand side to our assignment types by selecting the writing button. So instead of doing the guided versions now, we're going to hit browse prompts for our quick writes. And here you're going to see many different categories. Now within our quick writes, what's important to know is that you are going to find a lot of our AI grading that's available here. So for example, if I want to do a text and some short response works with my students, you're going to notice that we've got this magic wand by many of the texts here. Anytime you see a magic wand, that means that AI grading is available and will give students that targeted feedback. And so, for example, maybe we're looking at catching frogs. These are some of our elementary ones. Check out some of our 5th grade ones too. Let's do a couple more. We've got great justice for all. Okay, here we go. So if I'm in justice for all, when I scroll down here into my analyze, you're going to see we've got that magic wand, which means that AI grading is available. And so that is something that's going to be standards lines. Students are going to get feedback, hopefully closing that loop. Now back to my quick rates here, we've got the test prep tile. So that test prep tile, this is going to be where you find your smarter balanced assignments. So here you can then see we've got the short answers or the performance tasks. And as I expand this then, it then takes me to the source itself. The assigning process is going to be the same. You'll come here and hit that eyeball icon. I do still recommend before kids dive into a quick write for the first time that you use this eyeball icon, preview it with them, and actually show them how to interact with this itself. So this is going to be the way that you are getting to those quick writes, the unscaffolded versions. 15 more seconds to wrap up where you're at for that work time. And then we are going to continue on with some implementation suggestions. So as we head into our last few minutes here together as a group, I do just want to give you a couple of tips, recommendations when it comes to using these activities in your classrooms. So the first thing, so when it actually comes to supporting your students or even sequencing a writing unit that is aligned to the SBAC performance task, we want to make sure that you are giving it like a set amount of time to do that mini writing unit. So for example, maybe on day 1, you're starting with the teaching of the writing genre. You're doing things like showing the tutorial to your students, previewing the student perspective, maybe even co-writing a component of it to show them how this writing genre might be a little bit different than other types of writing you've done in your class. Day 1, you could also consider bringing in like some sample essays, some example essays, and actually walking through how is it organized, how is it structured, so students know what they're aiming towards. From there then, days 2 to 3, then spend your time dedicating it to timed writing, right? So thinking about giving your students pre-writing graphic organizers on that first time, and then maybe they're then doing the actual drafting, transferring their graphic organizer into either the guided essay or the quick write itself. During this time too, as a teacher, pull small groups, right? If you need to differentiate based on where your kids are at, that is your moment, that is your time. And so days 2 to 3, we really are going to dedicate to that drafting. From there then, days 4 to 5, we do want to still emphasize with all of our kiddos the importance and the value of revising and editing. And so as a teacher, you might be choosing to model a specific technique to your students that they are then taking into their own piece of writing. You can send things back through our revision tool as many times as you would like, but we do want to just emphasize the importance of you giving a piece of targeted feedback on each individual kiddo's piece of writing. The last day then, you can do the publishing component. Maybe we're even celebrating students. I know for me, I like to do publishing parties sometimes, which was fun, where students could actually even share some of their writing with one another as well. And so regardless of how much time you do have to do this, really try and sequence it in a way that makes sense to your classroom, and make sure you're giving yourself enough time to read through student work, leave feedback on the different assignment types. Okay, on the note about fostering, revising, and editing skills, I do here just have a screenshot of what it looks like from the teacher side. So if your students do complete multiple drafts of you, you're going to see this beautiful button up at the top that's going to allow you to toggle to the different drafts. This is a really powerful tool during writing conferences. As a teacher then, you are also able to see all the feedback that you've given over time as well. And so you can have students reflect on how they've improved from draft number 1 to maybe draft number 3. And so do know on the teacher side, you're able to see this, and on the student side, they can reflect on their progress too. All right, my last note is then about how our writing portfolios work. And so within NoRedInk, each individual kiddo is going to have a writing portfolio. The cool thing about writing in NoRedInk is any piece of writing that happens in third grade, let's say, it will follow the student year over year. So for example, if I have my third grade student working on an SBAC aligned prompt and they go to fourth grade the next year, my fourth grade teacher can then see how I actually performed on my third grade assignment. And so this is a really great way to actually see student progress over time. Now, in terms of writing submissions, this is for any writing assignment that students are doing. And so students do have this capability that is automatically turned on from them. Teachers do not have to turn it on at all. Okay, any clarifying questions about our writing implementation best practices? Okay, our learning target for today. So we accomplished a lot. Our learning target for today was that we can use NoRedInk to prepare students for the SBAC over the course of the year. Any lingering questions before we feel like we've mastered this objective and hopefully have a couple ideas of what you can bring into your classrooms? A couple of quick notes for you just about NoRedInk. Today, we just talked about SBAC alignment, right? So we're really diving into our guided essays and then also our quick writes. If you have a desire to learn a little bit more, I would highly recommend that you check out some of our asynchronous trainings. So at the top of your page, you are going to notice NoRedInk Academy. These are going to be bite-sized micro-learning trainings, about 10 minutes each. We are able then to dive in and actually learn a new tool. So for example, if you're excited about modules, and we didn't talk about that today, we have an entire session here on modules. If you want to learn more about the AI grading and feedback, we have an entire session on the AI grading and the feedback process. So feel free to check that out. That exists in our NoRedInk Academy.